Hey dudes, it's Larold. In this video, we're going to cover a bunch of the things you may not know about how to link and recolor gem sockets in your gear. There are so many shortcuts available that can save you a ton of currency. We don't want you to waste your orbs, after all. Now, a lot of the information in this video is well-known stuff for experienced players. There are a lot of new players to PoE 1 right now, and most of the guides out there about socket colors and links are like 10 years old, so this seemed like a great time for an updated video. So let's just go ahead and get right into it, but first be sure to like and subscribe, join our Discord as well. Okay, let's start with the gigantic tree made out of hands that's in the room. It's never been easier to craft basic 6-linked items than it is right now in Keeper's League, thanks to the Genesis tree, and really thanks to these two specific nodes here. This small passive that gives your items that you craft basically 10 free rerolls on sockets and links, keeping the best outcome, and then more importantly this one that does it another 150 times. So getting a free 160 rolls on your sockets and links on items that you spawn gives you something like a 1 in 10, 1 in 8 chance for your items to spawn in 6-linked. You can bump that up a little bit with basic nurturing, kind of push it closer to that like 1 in 8. So you're going to be able to spawn a lot of 6-linked items by default with this, and the same goes with these two bonuses over here, Lucky Sockets and Throbbing Veins in the unique tree. And so for items that you can create with the Genesis tree, like basic unique items, or basic rare items, but not boss uniques, it is easier than ever to just make items that are already 6-linked. With that being said, there are a lot of those unique items like boss drops that you cannot spawn with the tree, and there's the very real possibility that this mechanic is not going to carry over into future leagues. So learning about how to manipulate sockets cheaply is important, and while this tree is great, there is a lot of stuff that it can't do, like make off-color sockets. Alright, so since I am still poor, it's still early in the league, I have jumped over to Standard League where I have, infinite money to set on fire and kind of just talk through some of the things that are important to know about sockets. So let's just start with a couple of basic numbers here. The chance to get a 6-socket item with a Jeweler's Orb is like 1 in 350. As you can see, just slapping them on there, it's not happening super quickly. And the chance to 6-link a random item is 1 in 1500. So farming up 1500 orbs of fusing is a daunting task, especially for a new player. Even for not a new player, it's a pain, right? There are some things you can do to improve those odds. For one, quality of the item, as in using like armor scraps or blacksmith's whetstones, increase that chance by the amount of quality. So you go from a 1 in 1500 chance to 6-links, only 1 in 1200. Still not great, but if you're trying to do it by hand, that does make it a lot easier. You can also use the crafting bench. This is a shortcut. It is definitely better for your wrists. So just like quickly 6-socket an item with 350 Jeweler's Orbs, or 6-link an item with 1500 fusings. It's more expensive, but it saves you a lot of time, and time is money. So that is kind of the most basic approach. So there are some other options as well. There are Omens of Connection, which, because I am on Standard League, at least the last time I checked, there just literally aren't any on the, we'll call it auction house. But Omen of Connections is something that comes from Ritual, and it is guaranteed. If you have this in your bag, you use 1 orb of fusing, and now you have a 6-link, assuming you have 6 sockets. This is great. These usually cost around the same price as a 6-link via fusings, but that is definitely an option as well. It's a good reason to farm Ritual. It is a big jackpot when you hit those. There are some other easy ways, especially when you're dealing with uniques though, and I'm going to kind of hit on some of those now, and that would be Tainted Currency, which I bought up a bunch of that, and let's go ahead and show these off. So Tainted Fusing Orbs and Tainted Jeweler's Orbs are able to modify the sockets of corrupted items, which you are able to do. This is something that's very different from PoE 2, where a corrupted item is done, it's locked off. You can actually use the bench to craft corrupted items sockets, but it just causes them to have a Vol Orb cost in addition to the standard Jeweler's Orb cost, like you can see. 4 sockets is 10 Jeweler's Orbs, or if it's corrupted, 10 Jeweler's Orbs and 10 Vol Orbs. So what a Tainted Jeweler's Orb does is it will randomly, it seems to be a 50-50 chance, just coin flip, either add or remove a socket. So it's very cheap to craft up to 4 sockets, and that's exactly what you do. Then you slap it with a Tainted Jeweler's Orb, hope it goes up to 5. If it were to have gone down to 3, then what we would do And we can even just try that again, see if we get it. All right, we're just gonna sit here and do this a few times until we get unlucky. The one time I want to be unlucky, it doesn't work out. Okay, there we go. If it went down to 3, we would just craft back up to 4. And then we just tap it with Jeweler's Orbs, Tainted Jeweler's Orbs, until we get up to 6. There we go, nice and easy. Then we're going to repeat the same process with Tainted Orbs of Fusing. Now the way that these work can be a little bit visually confusing, but it just does essentially the same process. It will, on a 50-50 shot, either add or remove a link to the largest group of linked sockets on a corrupted item. So, make sure that we have the right thing selected here for linked sockets. We click that, and now we have 4 linked sockets, and then the other 2 can be linked, they can not be linked, it doesn't really matter. We hit them with a fusing, and we hope it goes up to 5. It did. That's very lucky. We essentially rolled heads. And all you really have to do is roll heads twice in a row. And naturally, I just rolled heads 2 times in a row there. So the issue with doing it this way is that Tainted Orbs of Fusing are usually much, much, much cheaper than just bench crafting like a 1500 fusing item, or handcrafting an item with 1500 fusings that's not corrupted. But you do have to have a corrupted item in order for Tainted Orbs to work, and there's a real possibility that if you have a valuable item that you something that you like, if you hit it with a Vol Orb, it might add a nice implicit like that, or it might brick the item, or re-roll it in some way and ruin it. So starting with a corrupted base, like actually buying a base that is corrupted, or if it's a very cheap item, just buying a cheap item and corrupting, and, you know, if it corrupts into garbage, then you buy another one for 1 chaos. That is a move that can usually average out to being much cheaper when you're trying to get a specific type of 6-linked unique body armor or weapon, you know, lightning coil, for example. That can usually wind up being much cheaper than actually manually 6-linking it or buying one that's already 6-linked. However, there is the possibility that you get unlucky. There is RNG in doing it this way. It's just a coin flip, after all. But, you know, sometimes you can have this go the wrong way, where it just sits here and toys with you for a long time. Looks like I used up all my luck here today. Alright, so there is one other method of reforging socket links, of essentially getting a bunch of fusing orbs slammed onto an item, and that is running Vorici in Fortification at rank 3. He will let you put in your own item, and then as long as it's not corrupted, I don't believe it works on corrupted items, but he will reforge the socket links 100 times, and then you keep the greatest number of links. So that's really pretty inefficient, but if you're on SSF or you're super broke and you like doing Betrayal, you can set up Vorici in Fortification, and then do those runs to, you know, give yourself the shot at doing this, and you've got something like a 1 in 12 to 15 shot of this actually working out. Alright, now let's go ahead and move over to socket colors. So socket colors in Path of Exile have an affinity towards the armor type that they're in, or weapon type that they're in. Essentially, the stat requirements will dictate the standard socket color. So this is a pair of dexterity boots. They are mostly going to roll green sockets. I don't know what the exact affinity, like the number is, but it's something like green sockets are something like 5 to 10 times more likely to appear than reds and blues. So if you want to get a bunch of reds or a bunch of blue sockets onto a pair of evasion-only boots, that's pretty difficult. Some of these pieces that are more hybrid, like armor evasion, you know, if you're wanting to get like a combination of red and green on these, that won't be too bad, but if you want to get a bunch of blues, it's going to be very difficult. So if an item is corrupted, using a Tainted Chromatic Orb is basically just a 1 in 3 roll for each of the sockets for any of the 3 different colors. You can see we got, you know, all blues and 1 green, but then we got 4 reds. It's just a very, like, total RNG rolls with Tainted Chromatic Orbs. But that only works for corrupted items. A lot of the time you don't want to corrupt an item, you just want to get some off-color sockets. Like, for example, I'm wearing an Energy Shield helm on this character. It's an old Toxic Rain Pathfinder. And I have 2 green sockets and a pure Energy Shield helm. How did I do that? I use bench crafting. So let's say I wanted to take this evasion-based helm here and get like a red and 2 blues in it. That is something that we have in our current Toxic Rain Pathfinder setup, and it's not something that we've talked about really. So this is, I guess, us doing that. So down here, below all the socket options, there are all of these different color options for recoloring your gems. And one thing that's important about the crafting bench in terms of the way that it interacts with sockets is it always applies to the top left socket first. So any sort of thing that you do is going to start in the top left and work its way down, like basically in an S curve, the exact same way that links order, right? So if I craft one blue socket, it's going to guarantee that that first one is blue, and then everything else will be, RNG. If I do one red, first one will be red, and then whatever. If I do one red and one blue, then it'll be red and blue in that order. Now, the thing is that if you want like 3 off-color sockets, crafting this for 100 chromatic orbs is super expensive. This is not the most effective way to do it. The most efficient way is if you want, let's say you want 3 off-color sockets, and you want like, let's say we wanted 2 reds and a blue and a green on this evasion-based helm. The cheapest approach here would be to craft 1 red and 1 blue. And let's say we got double green on the other 2. Then we could come back up and go to 2 sockets. That only costs 1 Jeweler's Orb. Basically, it's free. Then you craft 3 sockets with Jeweler's Orb, and you just hope that you get a red. And you just keep doing this back and forth, back to 2 to 3, to 2 to 3, over and over again, until you get that red. This is a really effective way of getting these off-color sockets in any sort of 4-socket item because, the amount of Jeweler's Orbs that you need to spend, even if it is like 100 Jeweler's Orb, that's just relatively very, very cheap compared to the amount of chromatic orbs that it would have cost to do this same craft. Alright, there we go. Sometimes it can be a little time consuming, but it really didn't burn through that many Jeweler's Orbs. Then if we want the green socket as the 4th, we could just hit 4 sockets and then it'll probably be green. There we go. Pretty straightforward. Now for body armor, it can be a little different. You probably aren't wanting to be sitting there doing this on a piece of body armor, 2 sockets, 3 sockets, unless you're doing that before doing all of the necessary work in order to 6-link it. And so there are some other options for getting white sockets onto items. So one of the ways is to corrupt items. We're not going to recommend that. That's really not a great way. But there are omens of blanching. This is something that you can use on an item. Like you just basically have one of these in your inventory. Again, another way that Ritual is really great for anything related to sockets. You have one of these in your inventory, then you hit an item with a chrome, and it will convert 1 to 3 of the sockets into white sockets. That takes care of that. You can buy more of them and do that until you get 3 whites if you need, and that will usually cover all of the off-color sockets that you need. There is another option, and that would be using the Harvest Crafting Bench. This is a relatively expensive craft. It requires 12,500 Wild Crystallized Life Force and a Sacred Crystallized Life Force. Let's see if I could buy any on Standard. I have no idea. All right, there we go. Let's buy 10 of them. Cool. And so you can use this white socket. Type that in. You can use this to craft white sockets onto items, and it will work even if there are white sockets on the item. However, it can craft a white socket in an existing white socket. That is possible. So, there we go. We crafted 4 white sockets and it only cost, as much as a used car. But that is something you could do if you're really desperately itching to get a white socket on a piece of gear and you don't want to mess up any of the other socket colors. That is also an option as well. Okay, hopefully this will help you with getting off-color sockets in some of the builds we put together, and with getting 6-links more easily. Alright, that's it. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and join the Skipping Sleep Studio Discord and become part of our community. And finally, thank you to all of our channel members. If you want to support us and help us make more PoE content, become a channel member or come boost the Discord. Thanks for watching. Bye.